I never thought walking into a therapy room could change my life, but that's exactly what happened. My anxiety had been building for years, pressing down on me like an invisible weight. Every day felt like I was drowning in shallow water, close enough to the surface to breathe, yet unable to fully lift my head. My best friend had insisted I finally try therapy. With hesitation, I booked an appointment, convincing myself it was just one session, nothing more. The waiting room smelled faintly of lavender, with a quietness that was both soothing and suffocating. I tapped my fingers against my knee, trying to calm the tremor inside me. When the office door opened, I expected someone older, someone with glasses and a stern expression. Instead, she appeared tall, graceful, with chestnut brown hair pulled into a low bun and warm, curious eyes. She looked nothing like what I had pictured. She smiled, and for a moment, my anxiety loosened its grip. "Hi, I'm Dr. Elena," she said softly. Her voice was smooth, grounding me in a way I didn't expect. She gestured toward the office, and I followed, my heart thudding too loudly in my chest. The room was cozy, decorated with soft colors and bookshelves lined with psychology texts. A candle flickered in the corner, giving the space a strange sense of safety. I sat on the couch, my hands clasped tightly, and she sat across from me, leaning slightly forward, attentive but gentle. "So," she began, "what brings you here today?" The question was simple, but my throat tightened. Words felt stuck, trapped under layers of fear. She waited patiently, not pushing, just allowing me the space to breathe. And then, to my surprise, I told her everything about the panic attacks, the sleepless nights, the way my chest ached when I felt the world's expectations crushing me. She listened. Really listened. No judgment, no interruptions. Only nods and the occasional encouraging word. Her presence was like a steady light in a storm I had been wandering through for years. When the session ended, I felt lighter. Still anxious, but less alone. As I walked out, she smiled again, and I felt something stir inside me, something I didn't want to name. This was therapy, not romance. But even then, I knew there was something different about Elena. Something I couldn't ignore. The week between my first and second session felt like an eternity. I kept replaying her smile in my head, the way her voice softened when she reassured me, the calm presence she carried so effortlessly. It was ridiculous, I told myself. She was my therapist, nothing more. But still, something about her lingered in my chest like a song stuck on repeat. When I returned, the lavender scent was there again, and so was she. "Welcome back," Elena said warmly, and the corners of her eyes crinkled in a way that made me feel seen. My heart betrayed me, beating faster, as if it knew something I hadn't admitted yet. We talked about my triggers, about how certain situations made my chest tighten and my thoughts spiral. She asked questions that went deeper than anyone else ever had. "What's the story you tell yourself when you feel that fear?" she asked. I blinked at her, caught off guard. No one had asked me that before. As I tried to answer, my voice cracked. Tears I had been holding back for years spilled over, and I hid my face in my hands. I expected silence, maybe awkwardness. Instead, I heard her gentle voice. "It's okay. You don't have to hold it all together here." When I looked up, her eyes were filled with a kind of compassion I had never experienced. Not pity, not detached professionalism, but something deeper. She handed me a tissue, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel ashamed of breaking down. Over the next sessions, something shifted. I started opening up about parts of my life I had buried, the way I constantly felt I wasn't enough, the weight of pretending to be fine, and the loneliness that haunted me. She never rushed me, never judged me. Each time she listened, it was as if my walls were crumbling brick by brick. And yet, the more I shared, the more I noticed her. The way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was deep in thought. The soft laugh she let out when I accidentally cracked a nervous joke. The warmth in her eyes that lingered a moment too long. After one particularly emotional session, I lingered by the door, not ready to leave. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice fragile. "You're stronger than you think," Elena replied, her gaze locking with mine. My stomach flipped, and for a heartbeat, it felt like the world paused. I left the office with my heart racing, not from anxiety this time, but from something I couldn't ignore anymore. I was falling. Slowly, quietly, but undeniably, I was falling in love with her. By the third week, therapy had become the part of my week I looked forward to most. It was strange. I had dreaded facing my anxiety for so long, but with Elena, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like finally breathing after years of holding my breath. That day, I walked in carrying not just my notebook of thoughts, but also a secret flutter in my chest. She smiled at me as I settled into the couch, and I swore the room brightened a little. We talked about progress, small victories, like how I managed to go grocery shopping without feeling like everyone was watching me. She celebrated it with me, her enthusiasm genuine. "That's huge," she said, eyes sparkling. "You're learning to trust yourself." Her words warmed me in places I didn't know could still thaw. I should have been focusing on the therapy, on my healing, but every now and then, my gaze would drift to the curve of her lips when she smiled, to the way her hands moved gracefully when she explained a concept. I scolded myself silently. She was my therapist. This was not supposed to happen. Yet the more I tried to suppress it, the more it grew. That session, she asked me about relationships. "Do you find it difficult to let people in?" she asked gently. The question pierced me deeper than expected. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes," I admitted. "I've always been afraid that if someone really saw me, the panic, the overthinking, the mess, they'd leave. So I just never let them close enough." Her gaze softened, her voice low but steady. "But here you are, letting me see you. And I haven't left." Something in my chest cracked open. For a split second, the air between us felt charged, almost fragile. I wanted to say something, anything, but words failed me. Instead, I just nodded, blinking away tears. When the session ended, I lingered again, standing by the door with my bag clutched tightly. "Elena," I started, not even sure what I wanted to say. She tilted her head, waiting. "Never mind," I whispered finally, my courage failing me. Her smile was soft, but there was something unreadable in her eyes. "Take care of yourself this week," she said, and her voice carried a warmth that clung to me long after I left. That night, lying in bed, I replayed every moment. The way she looked at me, the way she said she hadn't left. My anxiety had brought me to therapy, but something else was blooming here, something far more dangerous and beautiful. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to fight it. The next session felt different even before I stepped into the room. My heart raced, but not with the usual anxiety that dragged me down. This was something else, something dangerous, something alive. Elena greeted me with that familiar smile, and suddenly, the walls I had built around myself seemed even thinner. I sank into the couch, trying to focus, but every detail about her seemed magnified, the way her shirt hugged her shoulders, the delicate curve of her neck, the warmth in her gaze when she looked at me. We started with small talk, but she noticed my distraction. "You seem a little somewhere else today," she said softly. I laughed nervously. "Yeah, maybe my head's just crowded." She tilted her head, studying me in that careful way of hers. "Do you want to talk about what's crowding it?" I hesitated. How could I possibly tell her that she was the one taking up space in my mind? Instead, I shook my head. "Not yet," I whispered. She didn't push, and that only made me fall harder. Instead, she shifted the session towards self-compassion, guiding me through an exercise where I spoke to myself as if I were comforting a friend. It was awkward at first, but when I looked up, her encouraging nod made me keep going. For the first time, I felt the possibility of being gentle with myself. As the minutes slipped by, I felt lighter. Therapy wasn't just healing me, it was changing me. And at the center of that transformation was her. When the session ended, I stood slowly, not ready to leave. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted the strap of my bag. "Elena," I said softly. She looked up, and her eyes caught mine. Something passed between us, something unspoken yet undeniable. "Yes?" she asked. I wanted to tell her everything, how her presence calmed my storms, how I looked forward to seeing her more than anything, how I was terrified of what these feelings meant. but my courage faltered again. Instead, I smiled faintly and said, "Thank you for today. For all of this." Her expression softened, almost as if she understood what I wasn't saying. "You don't need to thank me," she replied. "You're doing the hard work. I'm just here with you while you do it." But her voice lingered in my ears long after I walked out. And deep inside, I knew the truth. I wasn't just healing in therapy. I was falling fully, irreversibly, for the woman who was helping me put my pieces back together. That night, as I stared at the ceiling, one thought refused to leave me. What happens when feelings cross lines that were never meant to be crossed? By the 5th session, the therapy room no longer felt foreign. It had become a space where I could breathe, unravel, and be seen without masks. But that safety also carried a risk, the risk of the feelings I was struggling to hide spilling out in ways I couldn't control. That afternoon, the rain pattered softly against the office window. Elena's hair was down for the first time, falling over her shoulders in gentle waves. The sight caught me off guard, stealing my words before the session even began. We started with grounding exercises, her voice guiding me back into my body whenever my thoughts wandered too far. "Notice the chair beneath you," she said gently. "Notice your breath, steady and present." I followed, but what I noticed most was her. The warmth in her tone, the way she seemed to care not just as a professional, but as a human being sitting across from me. When she asked about my week, I hesitated. It was better, I admitted. But I keep catching myself waiting for these sessions, like they're the only time I feel truly calm. Her expression softened, but her eyes searched mine carefully. "That's not unusual," she said. "Sometimes the therapeutic space becomes a sanctuary. It's a place where you feel safe to be yourself." Her explanation made sense, yet my heart twisted. It wasn't just the space I looked forward to, it was her. The silence stretched, and I found myself whispering, "Do you ever feel close to your clients?" For a moment, her lips parted as if the question had caught her off guard. She folded her hands gently in her lap. "Closeness is part of this work," she said carefully. "Trust, connection, they're essential for healing. But it's important to keep boundaries too." Her answer was professional, yet the flicker in her eyes told me she felt the weight of the question. My cheeks burned, and I quickly looked down at my hands, fumbling with the ring on my finger. The rest of the session flowed as usual, but the air felt different, charged, delicate, like something fragile was shifting between us. When the clock signaled our time was up, I lingered again. She walked me to the door, as always, and when I turned to say goodbye, our eyes met. For the briefest second, it felt like we weren't therapist and client. We were just two women, standing close, drawn by something neither of us dared to name. "Take care," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. I nodded, my chest tight with words unspoken. "You too." As I stepped into the rain, I realized I wasn't just battling anxiety anymore. I was battling my own heart, a heart that was already choosing her, no matter how impossible it seemed. The next week, I arrived earlier than usual. The waiting room was quiet, the faint scent of lavender wrapping around me like a secret. I told myself I was simply being punctual, but the truth was harder to swallow. I couldn't wait to see her again. When the office door opened, Elena appeared with that familiar smile. But this time, something in her expression lingered, as if she too had been anticipating this moment. She ushered me inside, and I settled onto the couch, my heart pounding in a rhythm I couldn't steady. The session began as usual, with her asking about my week. I hesitated, then admitted it was good, but also confusing. She tilted her head, her gaze focused. "Confusing in what way?" I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. "Sometimes I feel like I'm changing, like I'm becoming stronger. But at the same time, I feel more vulnerable. It's scary to let someone see me so deeply." Her expression softened. "That's part of the process," she said gently. "Healing doesn't make you invincible. It makes you more human. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage." The way she said it, the warmth in her tone, the sincerity in her eyes, made my chest ache. My lips parted, the words rushing to the surface before I could stop them. "It's not just vulnerability, it's you." But I swallowed them down, terrified of what they might mean. Instead, I let the silence stretch between us. And in that silence, something shifted. Her eyes lingered on mine a moment too long, and I could swear her breath hitched ever so slightly. We moved on, talking about grounding exercises, about anxiety triggers. Yet beneath every word was an undercurrent we both felt but refused to name. When the session ended, I stood slowly, my body reluctant to leave the cocoon of her presence. She walked me to the door, her hand brushing against mine for the briefest second as she reached for the handle. Electricity shot through me, quick and undeniable. Her eyes widened just slightly at the contact, and the air between us thickened with everything unsaid. Neither of us moved for a heartbeat. Then, she cleared her throat softly, her professional composure sliding back into place. "Take care this week," she murmured. I nodded, but my voice trembled as I replied, "You too." Outside, the world bustled as if nothing had changed, but everything inside me had. I knew, without a doubt, that something was building between us. Something dangerous, beautiful, and unstoppable. And I wasn't sure how much longer we could pretend it wasn't there. By the seventh session, I knew I couldn't keep hiding. My anxiety had led me here, but now my heart was carrying a weight heavier than any panic I'd ever known. Each week, my feelings for Elena grew louder, and each time I walked into her office, the line between therapy and something deeper blurred a little more. That day, I sat down on the couch, my palms damp, my chest tight. She greeted me with her usual warmth, but there was a softness in her eyes that unsettled me. It felt as though she, too, was holding something back. We spoke about progress, about the small victories that had started to shape my days. "You're not the same person who walked in here weeks ago," she said with quiet pride. "You're stronger. You're allowing yourself to feel." Her words almost undid me. My throat tightened, and before I could stop myself, the truth spilled out. "Elena," I whispered, my voice trembling, "what if the thing I'm feeling isn't just about therapy? What if it's about you?" The air in the room stilled. For a long moment, she said nothing. My heart raced, terrified I had ruined everything. But then she leaned forward, her eyes locked on mine, filled with a mix of caution and undeniable warmth. "You're not the only one who's felt something," she admitted softly. "But you know the rules, the boundaries. This is complicated." Tears stung my eyes. "I know. I never meant for this to happen. But I can't pretend anymore. You make me feel safe in a way I've never known. And it's not just about healing, it's about you." Her breath hitched, and for a moment, her professional mask slipped entirely. "Do you have any idea how hard it is not to see you as more than a client?" she whispered. The confession hung in the air, fragile and electric. I reached out instinctively, my hand brushing hers. She didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers curled around mine, tentative but real. The touch sent a rush through me, more grounding than any exercise we had ever done together. "We can't cross certain lines here," she said gently, though her hand remained in mine. "But that doesn't mean what's between us isn't real. It is. More than I ever expected." In that moment, the world outside didn't matter. The rain tapping against the window, the lavender scent, the flickering candle, everything blurred except for her eyes, her touch, her presence. I left that session knowing our story wasn't over. Maybe it couldn't fully bloom within those four walls, but the seed had been planted, undeniable and alive. Therapy had given me tools to face my anxiety. But more than that, it had given me something I never expected, a glimpse of love so profound it terrified and healed me all at once. And as I stepped out into the evening air, I realized something simple but life-changing sometimes. When you go searching for healing, you find love along the way. And sometimes, that love is the very thing that heals you most.